The old Phillips 66 sign creaked in the wind as I stood in the gravel parking lot, keys heavy in my hand. Johnson's Gas and Service Station, my father's life's work, and now, according to my brothers, my worthless inheritance. The peeling paint and weathered wood told a story of decades of neglect, but to me, this place held memories worth more than any dollar amount. My name is Emily Johnson, and this is how my father's worthless gift changed everything. I could still hear my brother's laughter echoing from yesterday's will reading. Michael, the successful real estate developer, and James, the corporate lawyer, both dressed in suits that probably cost more than this entire property was worth. At least that's what they thought. To my daughter, Emily, the lawyer had read from Dad's will, I leave Johnson's Gas and Service Station, including all property and contents thereof. Michael had actually snorted. Dad's old junk pile, perfect for the grease monkey of the family. James had smiled that condescending smile he perfected in corporate boardrooms. Well, Em, at least you can work on cars to your heart's content, though you might want to sell soon. That land's worth nothing since they rerouted the highway. They'd been less amused when the lawyer continued reading. To my sons, Michael and James Johnson, I leave the remainder of my liquid assets to be split equally between them. Dad hadn't been poor, but he wasn't rich either. The liquid assets amounted to about $100,000 each, pocket change to my brothers, who'd both made their fortunes in the city while I stayed behind, helping Dad run the station and getting my mechanical engineering degree at night. Is that it? Michael had demanded. What about the lake house? The stocks? Your father sold those years ago, the lawyer explained. The proceeds were used to pay off some old debts. I knew about those debts. I'd helped Dad manage them after Mom died, watching him work 60-hour weeks to keep the station afloat and put 3 kids through college. My brothers had never looked back after graduation, too busy building their empires to notice Dad's struggles. Now, standing in front of the station in the early morning light, I felt closer to him than ever. This place had been his dream since he bought it in 1975. I'd grown up here, learning to change oil before I could drive, doing homework on the beat-up desk in his office, falling asleep to the sound of him working late into the night. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Dad had always kept everything well-oiled, even as the business declined. The bell above the door chimed just like it had thousands of times before, but the sound echoed differently in the empty space. The interior was exactly as he'd left it the day he had his heart attack. Coffee cups still on the counter, yesterday's newspaper open to the crossword puzzle he never finished. Dad had always loved crosswords, said they kept his mind sharp. Life's full of puzzles, Emmy, he used to tell me. The trick is knowing which ones are worth solving. I ran my hand along the counter, remembering all the times I'd watched him help customers here. Dad knew everyone's name, their kids' names, their car troubles, their life troubles. He'd often accept payment in installments when times were tough, keeping track in an old ledger he never computerized. The office behind the counter was small but organized. Dad's ancient desk dominated the space, its surface scarred with decades of use. The old filing cabinets lined one wall, and a calendar from 3 months ago still hung beside them, marked with service appointments in Dad's precise handwriting. I sat in his chair, the leather worn smooth by years of use. The smell of motor oil and coffee still lingered in the air, and for a moment I could almost hear his voice. Check everything twice, Emmy. The devil's in the details. Opening the desk drawers, I began the task of sorting through 45 years of business records. Dad kept everything: receipts, invoices, Christmas cards from customers, even the original purchase agreement for the station. As I worked, a pattern began to emerge. Certain documents were filed together, marked with small red dots in the corner. Others had subtle underlines or circles around dates and numbers. My father had never done anything without a reason. In the bottom drawer, I found an old photo album. Inside were pictures of the station from 1975. Dad standing proudly in front, Mom pregnant with Michael beside him. The station had been beautiful then, with fresh paint and bright signs. The highway ran right past it, bringing a steady stream of customers. But it was the background of the photos that caught my eye. Behind the station, barely visible, was an odd structure I'd never noticed before. It looked like some kind of metal framework, partially hidden by overgrown bushes. I frowned, trying to remember if I'd ever seen it. The back lot had been unused for years, gradually overtaken by weeds and scrub brush. Dad had always said we'd clear it someday, but somehow we never had. Curious, I grabbed a flashlight from the supply shelf and headed out back. The morning sun was higher now, burning off the mist that often settled in our little valley. The weeds came up to my waist as I pushed through them, following the path I remembered from childhood. The structure was still there, almost completely hidden by decades of growth. As I got closer, I could see it was some kind of derrick, maybe 20 feet tall. My heart started beating faster. Could it be? But before I could investigate further, a car pulled up out front, gravel crunching under its tires. Through the weeds, I could see Michael's expensive SUV parking next to my old pickup truck. "Emily," he called out. "You here? We need to talk about this place." I sighed, tucking the photo into my pocket. Michael never talked about anything. He announced, demanded, and expected compliance. But this time, something told me to keep my discovery to myself. "Coming," I called back, making my way through the weeds. As I emerged, I saw both my brothers standing by Michael's car, looking out of place in their business casual attire. "Emily," James began, using his lawyer voice, "we've been thinking. This place is a liability. The environmental cleanup alone would cost more than it's worth. Why don't you let us buy you out? We'll give you, say, $25,000. That's generous, considering." I looked at them, my successful, sophisticated brothers who'd never understood why I loved this place, why I had stayed to help Dad while they built their lives elsewhere. "Thanks, but no thanks," I said. "I think I'll hold on to it for a while." Michael's face darkened. "Don't be stupid, Em. You can't run a gas station these days. The big chains have taken over. This place is dead. Has been for years." "Maybe," I replied, fingering the photo in my pocket. "But it's mine now, and I'm keeping it." "We'll give you $30,000, James offered. "Final offer. Sign the papers today." I smiled, remembering Dad's words about puzzles worth solving. "No, thank you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." They left angry, Michael's tires spitting gravel as he accelerated too fast. But I barely noticed. My mind was already back on that structure behind the station, and the meticulous records Dad had kept all these years. That evening, after hours of searching through files, I found what I was looking for. A document from 1975, marked with one of Dad's red dots. It was a geological survey of the property, including the back lot. My hands shook as I read it. If this was right, if Dad had known all along, I needed to make some calls. But first, I had to check one more thing. Moving to the old desk, I ran my hands along its edges, remembering how Dad would sometimes stare at it thoughtfully. The back panel felt different, slightly warmer than the rest of the wood. Pressing carefully, I felt a click. A small safe swung open, hidden in the desk's frame. Inside was a single envelope with my name on it. As I opened the letter, Dad's familiar handwriting brought tears to my eyes. "Dear Emmy, if you're reading this, you've already started putting the pieces together. You always were the clever one, the only one who really understood the value of patience and hard work. What you found in the back lot isn't just an old derrick, it's proof. Proof of something I discovered the day I bought this station, something I kept secret all these years, waiting for the right time. Your brothers will try to take this from you when they realize what it's worth. Don't let them. I've left you everything you need to protect yourself. The documentation is all there, if you know where to look. Remember what I taught you, sometimes the best things in life look worthless to others. That's what makes them precious. I love you, Emmy. Make me proud." "Dad, your daddy was one smart cookie, Emily," he said, shaking his head in amazement. "All these years, and he never said a word." George had been Dad's friend for 40 years and the county's most respected environmental engineer. If anyone could confirm my suspicions, it was him. I sat back in his chair, mind racing. If the geological survey was right, if Dad's notes meant what I thought they meant, then this worthless gas station was about to become the center of a storm. And my brother's laughter at the will reading would soon turn to something very different indeed. The next morning, I sat across from George Martinez at the local diner, watching his eyes widen as he reviewed the geological survey. "So it's real?" I asked, stirring my coffee. "The survey results?" "Oh, it's real, all right." He pulled out his iPad, showing me recent satellite imagery. "See these patterns in the vegetation behind the station? Classic indicators. Your daddy's property sits right on top of one of the largest natural gas deposits in the state. Conservative estimate? Worth about $50 million in extraction rights alone. My hands shook slightly as I set down my coffee cup. $50 million. No wonder Dad had kept it secret, waiting for the right time. Your brother's been sniffing around yet? George asked, knowing our family dynamics all too well. Tried to buy me out yesterday, $30,000. I laughed without humor. Called it generous. George snorted. Bet they won't think it's so worthless once they find out. You need to protect yourself, Emily. Get your ducks in a row before. The diner's door chimed. Michael walked in, followed by two men in expensive suits. His face darkened when he saw me with George. Well, well, he said, approaching our table. Having breakfast with Dad's old friend? How quaint. Michael, I nodded coolly. You're a long way from your office. Just showing some colleagues the local color. He gestured to the men behind him. These gentlemen are from Clayton Development. They're interested in revitalizing the area. I met George's eyes briefly. Clayton Development was known for aggressive land acquisition, especially in areas with natural resource potential. Sorry to interrupt your meal, one of the suits said smoothly, but we'd love to discuss some opportunities with you, Miss Johnson. Perhaps in a more private setting. Emily's not interested, George said firmly, gathering the papers on the table. Michael's fake smile vanished. This isn't your business, old man. Emily, these gentlemen are prepared to make a very generous offer. Don't be foolish. I stood up, placing a $10 bill on a table. Thanks for breakfast, George. Michael, you can tell your friends I'm not selling. Not now, not ever. As I walked out, I heard Michael call after me. You can't develop that land yourself, Emily. You need connections, money, expertise. But I was already heading to my truck, mind racing. Michael's appearance with Clayton Development meant one thing. Somehow, he'd found out about the gas deposits, which meant I needed to move fast. Back at the station, I dove back into Dad's files with new purpose. The red-dotted documents told a story, one that Dad had carefully documented over decades. Environmental studies, property surveys, mineral rights confirmations, local ordinance changes. He'd recorded everything. But it was a series of letters from 1975 that made me understand his true genius. Dad hadn't just discovered the gas deposits by accident. He'd known about them before he bought the station. The previous owner had no idea what lay beneath the property, but Dad had done his research. He'd spent years quietly buying up mineral rights from surrounding properties, piecing together a complete claim to the entire deposit. The debts he paid off using the lake house and stocks. Actually investments in securing those rights. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Michael told me about Clayton. Don't be stupid. This is bigger than you can handle. Let the professionals handle it. I ignored it, continuing my search. In the back of one filing cabinet, I found a locked metal box. The key from Dad's desk safe fit perfectly. Inside was everything I needed. Original deeds, mineral rights documentation, environmental impact studies, and most importantly, a thumb drive. Loading it onto the ancient computer, I found years of correspondence with the State Environmental Protection Agency, documenting every step Dad had taken to preserve and protect the land. Another text, this time from Michael. Called Mom's sister. She agrees you're in over your head. Family meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m. Be there. I smiled. Same old Michael, trying to use Aunt Sharon to pressure me. But he didn't know what I knew, that Dad had already thought of everything. The next morning, I arrived at Michael's downtown office to find not just my brothers, but Aunt Sharon, two Clayton Development executives, and a team of lawyers. Emily, Michael began, every inch the successful businessman. We're here to help you make the right decision. Clayton is prepared to offer you $500,000 for the property. That's more than fair. I set my briefcase on the conference table. Actually, I have a counter-proposal. James laughed. Counter-proposal. Emily, you don't even know what you're sitting on. You mean the natural gas deposits? I said quietly. The room fell silent. Worth about $50 million in extraction rights? Yeah, I know all about those. Michael's face reddened. How did you? Dad told me, I interrupted, opening my briefcase. Briefcase. Well, he left me the breadcrumbs to follow. While you two were building your careers in the city, he was building something too. Something he knew only I would understand and appreciate. I laid out the documents one by one. Complete mineral rights to the entire deposit, environmental impact studies, state approvals, even a preliminary extraction plan that meets all current safety standards. The Clayton executives leaned forward, suddenly very interested. But that's family property. Aunt Sharon protested. Your brothers should have a say. Actually, I pulled out one final document they don't. Dad transferred everything to a trust in my name 5 years ago. It's all completely legal and binding. Right, James? James grabbed the trust document, scanning it with growing dismay. This is ironclad, he admitted reluctantly. So here's my counter-proposal. I turned to the Clayton executives. I maintain controlling interest in the property and all rights. You provide the extraction expertise and infrastructure. We split the profits 70-30 in my favor, with a guaranteed commitment to environmental protection and local job creation. That's ridiculous, Michael spluttered. You can't. Actually, she can, one of the Clayton executives interrupted. And it's a fair proposal given the value of the assets. He turned to me with new respect. Would you be willing to discuss terms? 4 hours later, I walked out of Michael's office with a signed preliminary agreement. The Clayton lawyers would draw up the final contracts, but the basic terms were set. I'd maintain control while leveraging their expertise and resources, exactly as Dad had planned. Emily, wait. James caught up to me at the elevator. How long have you known? About the gas, since yesterday. About Dad's trust in me, my whole life. The elevator doors opened. You two could have visited him more. Asked him about his work. Shown some interest in the station beyond its apparent value. We had careers to build, Michael said, joining us. Responsibilities. So did I replied. To Dad, to the station, to the community he loved. Guess it all worked out exactly as it should have. Back at the station that evening, I sat in Dad's chair, looking at his crossword puzzle from that last morning. He finished more of it than I'd initially thought. I just hadn't looked carefully enough. In the margin he'd written one final note. Emmy, the real puzzle isn't finding treasure, it's becoming the kind of person who deserves to find it. Over the next year, Johnson's gas and service station transformed into Johnson Energy Corporation. We maintained the original building as our headquarters, restored to its 1975 glory, while developing the back lot into a state-of-the-art natural gas facility. The project brought hundreds of jobs to our small town. The extraction was done with cutting-edge environmental protections, just as Dad had envisioned. We even established a scholarship fund for local students interested in environmental engineering. Michael and James eventually came around, especially after I invited them to join the company's board of directors. In non-controlling positions, of course. Sometimes the best way to heal family wounds is to give people a chance to earn what they thought they deserved. Every morning, I still arrive early, just like Dad taught me. The old Phillips 66 sign has been restored, standing proudly alongside our new corporate logo. Joe, our first employee's son, runs the service station portion of the business, keeping Dad's tradition of personal service alive. And in my office, Dad's old office, I keep two things on prominent display: the original geological survey that started it all, and a framed quote that Dad had written in his letter to me. The true value of anything, property, business, family, isn't in what others think it's worth, but in what you're willing to invest in it. Time, faith, love. Those are the real assets that appreciate. Last week, a young girl came into the station with her father, who was getting his car serviced. She was fascinated by the old desk, now restored to its former glory. My dad built this company right here at this desk, I told her. He taught me that sometimes the best treasures are hiding in plain sight. You just have to be patient enough to look for them, and wise enough to recognize them when you find them. She nodded solemnly, running her hand along the desk's smooth surface. Do you miss him? Every day, I replied, but he left me something better than money or property. He left me his legacy, not just what he built, but how he built it. With integrity, patience, and faith in the future. As I watched her leave with her father, I thought about how life comes full circle. Somewhere out there, another father is teaching another daughter the value of looking beneath the surface, of seeing worth where others see waste. And maybe, just maybe, she'll remember that lesson when it matters most.